Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Distinguished guests, Your Excellencies, learned speakers, brothers and sisters, welcome to the International Institute of Advanced Islamic Studies, IAIS Malaysia, and the Palestine Kashmir Forum, the Struggle for Freedom and Self-Determination. This forum is organized jointly by the High Commission of Pakistan, the Malaysian Islamic Organization Consultative Council, MAPIM, IAIS Malaysia, Secretariat of the Assembly of Asian Islamic Scholars, Shura, Manar, and the Palestine Culture Organization. We begin this event with recitation of the Holy Quran. For this, I warmly invite Brother Ziyad Shahada of PICOM to recite the Quran. Brother Ziyad will recite Suratul Isra, verses 1 to 8.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا إنه هو السميع البصير وآتينا موسى الكتاب وجعلناه هدى لبني إسرائيل ألا تتخذوا من دوني وكيلا ذرية من حملنا مع نوح إنه كان عبدا شكورا وقضينا إلى بني إسرائيل في الكتاب لتفسدن في الأرض مرتين ولتعلن علوا كبيرا فإذا جاء وعد أولاهما بعثنا عليكم عبادا لنا أولي بأس شديد فجاسوا خلال الديار وكان وعدا مفعولا ثم رددنا لكم الكرة عليهم وأمددناكم بأموال وبنين وجعلناكم أكثر نفيرا إن أحسنتم لأنفسكم وإن أسأتم فلها فإذا جاء وعد الآخرة ليسوءوا وجوهكم وليدخلوا المسجد كما دخلوه أول مرة وليتبروا ما علوا تتبيرا عسى ربكم أن يرحمكم وإن عدتم عدنا وجعلنا جهنم للكافرين حصيرا صدق الله العظيم.
Thank you, Brother Zia. Brothers and sisters, for the keynote address of the forum, we are pleased to have the High Commissioner of Pakistan to Malaysia, Her Excellency Madam Amna Balokh. I warmly invite Madam High Commissioner to deliver the keynote address.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Professor Muhammad Hashim Kamali, President, IAIS. Haji Muhammad Azmi Hamid, Chairman, MAPAM. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. At the very outset, I would like to thank Professor Hashim Kamali, Haji Azmi, and my dear other friends for organizing today's event at this august venue of International Institute of Advanced Islamic Studies and providing an opportunity to discuss two very important and grave issues, Kashmir and Palestine. Due to media attention focused on plethora of new problems such as Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan, Palestine and Kashmir have not been receiving the attention they deserve. Of the two issues, Palestine is far better known, thanks to the Palestinian effort, while apart from efforts of Pakistan, Kashmir issue has not received the attention it merits. Kashmir is the unresolved legacy of British colonial rule, and since 1947, the brave people of Jammu and Kashmir have suffered brutal repression by India for refusing to abandon the demand for freedom. The 70 years history of Kashmir is replete with wanton violence by India. However, the current extremist Hindu nationalist BJP government has crossed all limits of cruelty and injustice against the Kashmiris. On August 5, 2019, in a sweeping illegal and unilateral action, Modi government revoked special status and privileges for Kashmiris under the Indian Constitution and downgraded Kashmir to a federally administered territory. These actions aimed at annexation of Kashmir, universally recognized as a disputed territory, in clear violation of UN resolutions and Pakistan-India agreements. This Indian move has removed all restrictions on Indians to settle in Kashmir, thus paving the way for demographic change in Kashmir. To forestall spontaneous public protests and outcry against this illegal repeal of Kashmir's autonomy, the Modi government has placed the entire Kashmir Valley under unprecedented curfew and communications blackout, leading to a humanitarian crisis. Today, the lockdown in Kashmir is running into its 70th day. Prior to undertaking these illegal measures, the Indian government had brought in 40,000 additional troops in Kashmir, which was already the most militarized zone in the world. According to a careful estimate, there is one soldier for every 20 people in Kashmir today. Ladies and gentlemen, the lockdown and communications shutdown has brought life to a complete halt, causing untold misery and sufferings to the people of Kashmir. Today, the territory presents a gloomy and ghostly look, as shops, hotels, hospitals, and educational institutions are closed and public life is at a standstill. Indian authorities have turned Kashmir into an open prison, as the area is cut off from the rest of the world and its inhabitants are forced to stay indoors. The blockade has led to immense hardships with acute shortage of essential commodities, including food, milk, and life-saving medicines. The religious freedom of the people has been curtailed as they are prevented from performing their religious obligations on such occasions as Eid and Friday prayers. The central masjid of Srinagar and many other mosques are sealed since 5th August. Attending funeral prayers has become a challenge. The situation in Kashmir has finally caught the attention of international media and NGOs in India, who have started to document the misery caused by unending curfews and communication shutdown. The New York Times published a report on 7th August titled, "In Kashmir, a Race Against Death, with No Way to Call a Doctor." The report cites several cases of medical emergencies where people died. These patients were prevented from reaching the hospitals while the crippled healthcare system was unable to respond in time. A delegation of Women's Voice, comprising 5 eminent women activists from India, conducted a fact-finding visit from 17th to 21st of September. And they also confirmed the atrocious situation in Kashmir. They noted a complete shutdown, immense suffering for women and children, particularly pregnant women and sick children, and chronically ill, unable to access medical care. The report noted the immense fear of the mothers for the safety of the young sons who had been picked by Indian Army. Many young ones turned up dead or severely tortured. It is important to note here that a massive crackdown has been launched in Kashmir, particularly against the youth. Over 13,000 Kashmiris, including pro-freedom fighter leaders, activists, traders, lawyers, and youth have been arrested by Indian troops to thwart demonstrations. Even pro-India politicians are under arrest. Alarmingly, a large number of young boys, some as old as 12 years, have been rounded up during night raids and shifted to unknown locations. Indian officials themselves have confirmed 4,500 arrests to date. To add insult to injury, Kashmiri prisoners are being shifted to jails far away from Kashmir, deep inside India, where they face hostile Hindu inmates. Their families can neither visit them nor provide any legal assistance. India's move has evoked strong resentment and outcry from people of occupied Kashmir. Despite curfew, more than 600 incidents of protests took place in last 10 weeks. Indian troops used excessive force, including pellet guns, tear gas, and even live fire to quash the protests. As there is a communication blackout, and the accurate picture of the injuries and killings by the Indian troops is not available. However, according to reports, scores of civilians have been killed since 5th August and hundreds have received serious injuries. Ladies and gentlemen, world leaders, including the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, the US President Donald Trump, French President Emmanuel Macron, Turkish President Erdogan, Prime Minister Tun Mahathir, and many global forums and organizations like Human Rights Council, EU, OIC, and the Amnesty International have expressed grave concern on the serious human rights situation in Kashmir and the escalation of tensions following India's inhuman actions in Kashmir. The United Nations Security Council was forced to call a special consultative session to discuss the crisis in Kashmir. This exclusive session on Kashmir was convened after a gap of 50 years. On Pakistan's request, a clear message was sent out that Kashmir remained an internationally recognized dispute and the right to self-determination of millions of Kashmir was not negotiable. The United Nations Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, in her address, and over 50 countries in their joint statement at the 42nd session of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, raised their concerns on the sufferings of people of occupied Kashmir due to continued lockdown. Even some Indian opposition leaders like Rahul Gandhi, Shashi Tharoor, Priyanka Gandhi, journalist Barkha Dutt, Nirpuma Subramaniam, and Nobel laureate Amrita Sen have strongly denounced the imposition of continued curfew and communications lockdown in Kashmir. Ladies and gentlemen, Kashmir is burning, and the people of Kashmir are suffering. I would like to request each one present here today to support Kashmir cause and help spread awareness on Kashmir. The conflict in South Asia, precipitated by India's reckless and ruthless steps, could engulf the whole world. Hence, it is incumbent upon all conscientious people to play their role in resolving Kashmir crisis. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Moving now to the forum, I kindly invite Associate Professor Dr. Muhammad Azam Muhammad Adil, Deputy CEO, IAIS Malaysia, to chair the session and introduce our speakers.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And very good morning. Her Excellency, Madam Amna Baloch, High Commissioner of Pakistan to Malaysia, Professor Hashim Kamali, Founding CEO IS Malaysia, Tuan Haji Azmi Abdul Hamid, President of MAPIM, Brother Muslim Imran, Director Palestinian Cultural Organization Malaysia, respective representatives from the embassies, as well as our collaborators. It is indeed delighted that we can have this forum on Palestine and Kashmir at IIS Malaysia this time. The crisis that before Palestine and Kashmir have been a source of global concern, and especially the Muslim countries. Interestingly, in terms of history, both states were formed almost at the same time. The establishment of Israel in 1948, which resulted in the expulsion of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, began only months apart from the Indian occupation of Kashmir. The division of the Kashmir region happened in July 1949 through a signed agreement between India and Pakistan 2 years after the two countries declared independence from British rule. Since then, the situation in both places have only deteriorated. In Palestine, decades of Israeli illegal occupation and violent policies in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip have prolonged the suffering of Palestinians and have no clear solutions in sight. In the Kashmir region, the recent revocation of Article 370 and 35A by the Indian government on 5th August was subsequently followed by instant lockdown on Kashmiris in the form of curfew, detain of top politicians, total communication blackout, and the deployment of thousands of additional troops on top of 700,000 personnel already on the ground. Many have made comparisons between the grave situation in Palestine and Kashmir. There are indeed several worrying similarities and connections. I identified three of these. First, with outsiders now legally permitted to own property in Jammu and Kashmir after abrogation of Article 370, Indian Prime Minister Modi and the BJP are now pursuing Israeli settler-style demographic change through the settlement of Hindus. Evidence has also shown that such demographic movement is spearheaded by the Hindutva ideology, similar to the ultra-nationalistic tendencies of religious Jewish settlers in the West Bank. Even more similar is how both the Hindutva and Zionist supremacists, nationalists worldwide, exhibit an attachment to ancient history as a source of participation. Second is the unilateral manner in which vital decisions involving multiple state parties were made. The recent scrapping of Article 370 and 35A of the Indian Constitution was done solely through the Indian Parliament without involving essential stakeholders such as the Kashmiris themselves. There have also been several possibilities of its breaching international laws, since it violates the contractual basis upon which the Maharaja of Kashmir decided to join India in 1947. This unilateral approach can also be seen in Palestine, most recently with the controversial US recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's the state capital, knowing well that it contravenes various clear UN resolutions. Third, and mostly importantly, is the worrying encroachment of civil and human rights of the Palestinians and Kashmiris, who are deprived of their fundamental rights to freedom and self-determination. The unjustified and undignified restriction to basic necessities such as food, water, communication, and movement that have long been imposed on both these regions must be urgently addressed. As we enter a new era of civilization, the problem of colonization, the problem of colonialism in these parts of the world remains in real and grave matter. It is hoped that the presentation by panel speakers, the ensuing discussions with the audience in this forum in general will further clarify and elaborate the issues on the ground. I hope that our event today can contribute towards reaching practical solutions and better policy decisions, especially in reference to Palestine and Kashmir. The Muslim Ummah and the global community must send strong unified message in the face of unjustified and must always prioritize peaceful negotiation, genuine consultation, and the virtue of consensus. With that, I would like to call the two panelists. First, Brother Muslim Imran, Director of Palestinian Cultural Organization Malaysia, to take the position up here. And the second panelist, His Excellency Mr. Atif Sharif Mian, Deputy Chief of Mission High Commissioner of Pakistan to Malaysia. Before I pass the mic to the panel, let me invite Tuan Haji Muhammad Azmi Abdul Hamid, President of MAPIB, to give an introductory remarks.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wallazi arsala rasulahu bil huda wa dinil haqq liyuzhirahu ala ad-din kullih wa kafa billahi shahida. Wa nusalli nusallim ala rasulihil karim al-mabusil rahmatan lil alamin. Amma ba'd. Mr. Chairman, His Excellency Madam Amna Baloch, the High Commissioner of Pakistan to Malaysia, Yang Berbahagia Professor Dr. Muhammad Hashim Kamali, the founding CEO of IAIS, the speakers, the committee of this forum, brothers and sisters. The word that has been almost regularly mentioned when you say about Kashmir and even about Palestine is this crackdown, lockdown, shutdown. But let me just say to you that the Muslims has this characteristic of resisting. And therefore, when I gave a few minutes of my thoughts to come up with a discussion about the various predicaments of the Muslims around the world, then Palestine and Kashmir was very clear to me. With a 1.8 billion Muslims around the world, in 57 majority countries, in 112 minority countries, the narrative of Muslims being oppressed, denied, and also violated of their human rights has become a narrative that is almost too often that we tend to say that that is something that is not strange. And therefore, there is this paralyzed of actions among the Muslims. Forget about the rest of the world. Palestine has suffered for the last 72 over years, and it's similarly with Kashmir. But the fact that these two places are almost the same size, Palestine with geography size and also Kashmir. And we have millions of Muslims surrounding both states. And now we are seeing a reality that we can't even do much. And that is very sickening in that sense. But when I mention now the lockdown, the crackdown, the shutdown, I always tell myself the Muslim will not go down. There is this now a yearning for us to speak about more action than just words. This forum may be just about words, but because it's a forum, we do not have the decision weightage to make things being resolved. But with the awareness, with this consciousness that each and one of us will be questioned by Allah, and therefore we do not wait for government to act. We have to do from each of us, the Muslims all over the world. I gave this motion to Her Excellency and the Office of the High Commissioner of Pakistan for this forum, and they accepted and welcomed this initiative. It is a small initiative in that sense. I tried to get more people to come in, and we invited Shura, the Secretariat for the Ulama Assembly of Asia, and also Manar, the Alliance of World Masjids in Defense of Aqsa, and also PICOM, the Palestinian Cultural Organization of Malaysia, and of course IAIS to be part of this organizing partnership, and we thank them, all of them, for making this event possible. What would be the outcome? We have drafted a small declaration, a joint declaration between Kashmir and Palestine, and I hope there will be something a bit new, because all this time we are all talking about Palestine standing on itself and Kashmir standing on itself. Now we are combining this forum so that there is this understanding, there is a more wider and more, right perspective, because the actors is one. What happened to Kashmir and what happened to Palestine, the actor was one. That is the British Empire. Both of them crafted this, and this is the result of what's happening. So I thank you so much. I thank all of the speakers and our guests. I hope we will have more to do after this, so that our effort will have that impact you want. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
And now I pass the mic to Brother Muslim Imran to talk about Palestine, 1947 and beyond, resistance and liberation.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good morning to you all, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, Your Excellencies, fellow friends. Thank you very much for this opportunity to meet and talk about two of the most important and pressing issues of the Muslim world today. I feel honored to join this panel to talk about Palestine, where I grew up, and watching the video earlier about the plight of the Kashmiris reminds me of the life I had in Palestine. I have seen curfew, and I know what it means to be banned from leaving your home for days or sometimes for weeks, to a point where you can't even have bread to eat or rice to feed your children. This should not be done to anyone. This shouldn't be faced by anyone. These kinds of colonial measures should not be practiced in today's world, but unfortunately they're still being practiced by some. And interestingly, they're being practiced by fellow friends. The current right-wing Modi government in India is a close friend of the extremist right-wing Israeli government of Benjamin Netanyahu. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to highlight 100 years of suffering and struggle. It will take us hours to discuss and present, but I would rather highlight the recent developments in Palestine, draw a picture of the current situation in Palestine, and then give a glimpse on the history of how this situation has evolved. Talking about the current situation in Palestine, let's look at it from two different angles. One, the international level, the international and regional level, and the other is the domestic level. 2 years ago, the whole world was unfortunate enough to have a new American president, President Donald Trump, who not only caused mess at home, but also managed to cause a lot of mess internationally. One of the regions that his policy has caused problems in was the Middle East. And when talking about the American policy in the Middle East, it has been a tradition for several American administrations to intervene in Middle Eastern politics, to pit one against the other, to engage militarily with local forces, with or against. But the current American president has added his own flavor to this current situation. He pushed for a right-wing Israeli settlement of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, something that the Palestinians have not imagined would happen in only 2 years of time. We are talking about an American president who has promoted right-wing Israeli interests. Within 2 years of time, he has been pushing for the so-called deal of the century, which would offer final settlement of the Middle East conflict at the expense of the Palestinians and the people of the region. Within 2 years, President Trump's administration, through his son-in-law Jared Kushner and the rest of the team, have been pushing for redrawing the map of the Middle East. You look at the Middle East of today. Unfortunately, the Middle East has been going through conflicts for the past century, but look at it today. You find powers going against each other, internal strife and civil wars in many Arab and Muslim countries in the Middle East, as well as bilateral conflicts between different Arab states in particular and Arab and Muslim states in the Middle East. So they're pushing for more fragmentation of the Middle East. What Sykes-Picot agreement of the early 20th century failed to do was to completely crush any regional powers. They are doing this now. There are a few sizable powers in the region that the American administration is not happy to see continue to exist, so they're pushing forward for further fragmentation of the Middle East, and that's why you see Middle Eastern powers conflicting each other and fighting over all kinds of issues. For the Palestinians, the American policy in the Middle East meant the killing of any sort of solution which will result in a Palestinian state. No real Palestinian state. No state for the Palestinians. And in order to achieve that, Trump's administration has practically killed off UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, which caters for the Palestinian refugees. So the right of return is being compromised. Jerusalem has been granted to the Israeli government on gold plate. The American administration recognizes Jerusalem now as united and eternal capital of the Jewish people. And more pressure has been exerted on Palestinian resistance, whether on the ground in Gaza through serious financial and policy sanctions, or internationally through pushing for resolutions in the United Nations that would criminalize Palestinian resistance. Luckily, the resolution that they tried to pass in the United Nations General Assembly failed, but attempts will continue. And add to that, real attempt to normalize the relations of many of the regional powers with Israeli occupation. This has been unthinkable a decade ago. It is very unfortunate that it is happening now. We've seen in the Bahrain conference a few months ago that some of our fellow Arab and Muslim nations are willing to go sit down with the Israelis and talk about normalization of relations without even thinking about the plight of their fellow Palestinians. Domestically, my dear brothers and sisters, let's look at how the situation has unfolded in the past few years, Israel's right wing is still on the rise. The last Israeli elections gives you a glimpse of how the Israeli society has become. Israel was founded by the left. The leftist secular groups formed Israel. Of course, it sounds ridiculous that someone who does not believe in God claims that God has promised this land to his ancestors, but let's forget about that. The left created Israel. These secular groups who were connected with the left internationally set up the Israeli state on our land. And today, the left is very marginalized in Israel to the extent that they won't even fill a few chairs. In the last Israeli elections, the right wing and the extreme right wing were competing over votes, and we had two prime ministerial candidates who are a war criminal, Benny Gantz, who led the war on Gaza in 2014, and a very war criminal, Benjamin Netanyahu, who has led many atrocities against the Palestinians, competing over votes. And until today, there's a political stalemate. They are unable to form a government, not because one is having a better agenda for the Palestinians than the other. No, it's because the secular and religious right-wing groups in Israel are competing for power. So we are facing religious, orthodox religious extremists and ultra-nationalist secular extremists in the case of the Israeli situation. It is very unfortunate that also domestically on the Palestinian front, that the Palestinians have not been able to achieve a national reconciliation yet. Although the Palestinian political division has been manufactured and engineered by the US and Israel, the Palestinians who currently realize that this division is manufactured by outside powers, unfortunately, they still fail to achieve a national reconciliation. About 2 weeks ago, 8 major Palestinian factions proposed a national reconciliation pact between the two major political forces, Hamas and Fatah. It was accepted wholeheartedly by Hamas chairman, former Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh. It was welcomed by some regional powers, but unfortunately, President Mahmoud Abbas was reluctant to accept this reconciliation pact, and the Palestinian reconciliation is still hanging. This is a very quick overview of the current situation in Palestine. While all these things unfold, Palestinian resistance continues on the ground. The Great Return March has entered its second year months ago, and Palestinians continue to march at the borders, protesting Israel's occupation and demanding right of return. The situation in the West Bank can somehow be described as an ongoing uprising, an ongoing intifada, which goes through different phases. But practically speaking, whenever there are Israeli crackdowns on Al-Aqsa Mosque, there will be Palestinian waves of intifada against these Israeli practices. And in order to better understand how we reached this situation, let's have a quick overview of the situation in Palestine through the past century. Now we are going to focus more on the last half century or so, the last 7 decades in which Israel existed. But the Palestinian struggle has started earlier when the British marched into Palestine in 1917 and occupied the remaining Ottoman territory of Palestine and started to set up an Israeli occupation through the 3 years of British mandate. We're going to highlight the Palestinian resistance efforts against Israeli occupation, and we've just highlighted the current situation. Let's talk about the nature of the Israeli occupation. Israel started 7 decades ago, and the Israeli government started as an expansionist new power. They joined the tripartite aggression on Egypt in 1956. They expanded their territories in 1967, and they further expanded their territories in 1982 when they invaded Lebanon. And that was probably the last point of time where Israel managed to successfully expand its colonial territories. The second phase of the Israeli occupation can be described as a fully fledged apartheid. When Israel failed after a few decades of its inception to expand its territories further, they resorted now to ethnically cleanse Palestinians and setting up a Jewish-only regime. The historical developments go, as you see in this map, from small Jewish-only settlements in Palestine a century ago to currently small Palestinian residential towns which are governed by a Palestinian authority but practically are still under occupation. If you look at the map of Palestine, Palestine is a very small territory, 27,000 kilometers square. Palestinians were supposed to have half of this map according to the United Nations partition plan of 1947. But the Jewish militias, the Haganah, Stern, Argon, and other groups had another plan. They set a plan called the Dalit plan, which was a military takeover plan that helped the Zionist militias to create the state of Israel in 1948 in the territories in green in this map. Palestinians were left with the West Bank on the right and the Gaza Strip on the left. But Israel was greedy enough to move on within 2 decades and occupy the rest of the lands of Palestine. As we speak, Palestinians have been struggling for years to get back some of their territories through all kinds of resistance, unarmed civil disobedience, military struggle, peace process, you name it. None has worked so far because of arrogance of power that Israel enjoys. Now they are too powerful to sit down and talk peace. They are too arrogant to accept, to give back some of what they have robbed in the light of day. Now, this occupation has been continuing in the second phase, which I dubbed as apartheid. It can be seen in the repression of the non-violent first intifada in 1987. It can be seen in the deception they practiced in the long failed peace process, which started in the early 1990s and has died years ago. And it can be seen in Israel's wars on Gaza in 2008, 9, 2012, and the most recent 2014. Over 6,000 Palestinians were murdered in these wars and tens of thousands were injured, and the destruction that occurred in Gaza has not been repaired until today. As we speak, 5 years after the last Israeli war on Gaza, which costed the Palestinians billions of dollars, nothing has been repaired from the destruction. This current Israeli apartheid has to come to an end. And in order to end this apartheid and to stop Israeli colonial expansionism, Palestinians have been resisting by all means possible. Now, I would say that Palestinian resistance has not been successful enough to liberate Palestine, but it has been successful enough to stop Israeli expansionism, and alhamdulillah, it has been successful enough to not let the Palestinians be a second Red Indians. We survived Israeli occupation. 7 decades of Israeli ethnic cleansing practices failed to break the will of the Palestinians. Resistance still continues. In spite of all the pressure exerted on the Palestinians, alhamdulillah, the willingness to resist Israeli apartheid practices and occupation practices continues. This is a brief list of a number of Palestinian uprisings and efforts to resist occupation in which tens of thousands of Palestinians were sacrificed, and which continue to be memorable days and years for the Palestinians. It started as early as 1929 when the Palestinians resisted the expansion of the Jewish settlements in Al-Aqsa mosque, in what Palestinians call Al-Buraq uprising or Al-Buraq revolution. It continued through the great Palestinian revolution of the 30s. One of the longest strikes in modern history took place in 1936. From April to October of 1936, Palestinians were on strike. Shops were closed, people didn't go to school, and the basic demand of the Palestinians was to stop Jewish migration to Palestine which was very clear designed to set up a foreign state on our land. It is very unfortunate that this strike did not bear the fruits, and when it failed, armed resistance started, and Palestinians resisted Nakba in 1948 with fellow other Arab and Muslim groups which resisted this occupation. The Palestinian revolution of the 60s was a great sign of the revival of the spirit of the Palestinians after being expelled from Palestine in 1948. These groups of refugees collected whatever they could and came back from refugee camps to fight back for their rights. In 1968, Al-Karama battle at the Palestine-Jordan borders was another proof that these young refugees will not give up their right to return. And the Palestinian participation in the Ramadan War of 1973 with other neighboring nations, the defense of Beirut in 1982, an epic of struggle was shown in Beirut, where the Palestinian Fidayeen and resistance groups refused to give in to Israeli pressure. The first and second intifadas which were started as civil disobedience and unarmed resistance, and later, because of the repression of the Israeli governments, turned into more violent resistance forms. The liberation of Gaza in 2005, when Israeli troops pulled out, and the defense of Gaza in the following years, and the current struggle in Al-Quds in Jerusalem to resist Israeli practices, were all just an example of how the Palestinians were willing to put all their efforts to resist occupation. Now, my brothers and sisters, this was a very quick overview of 1 century of suffering under Israeli occupation and apartheid practices, and a very quick overview of resistance and willingness to fight back in spite of the might of the opponent. But in order for this to bear fruit, for all these efforts to bear fruit, we have to come to aid these resisting Palestinians, just like we have to come to aid the Kashmiris in their plight and struggle for self-determination. If we ignore the plight of others, God forbids, we might one day need the support of others to end our own suffering. So, my dear brothers and sisters, I would remind myself and you of what Malcolm X, the icon of resistance against American apartheid, once said: if you don't stand up for something, you'll fall for anything. We have to stand up for human rights. We have to stand up for the right of these victims to live in dignity and to have their own right of self-determination, return to their homeland, and set up of their own states and nation. I really hope that through this kind of intellectual discussions and through these kinds of programs, we will be able to show the minimum that we can do in support of this struggle. A lot can be done, but it starts by caring about the plight of others. I thank the fellow organizers for this good initiative, and I appreciate IAIS kind gesture by hosting this kind of discussion, and I thank personally Chego Azmi for coming up with this idea and many other ideas, and I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless these efforts, and that one day Palestine will be free, inshallah, and that one day our Kashmiri brothers and sisters will have their long-awaited right of self-determination. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Brother Muslim. He has tackled, briefly about this development of this Palestine with regard to this, how these Israelis have conquered and also taken what the countries that belong to But I think not only that the Muslim brothers around the world should give a full support in having these Palestinians put back the country into the original platform. But I do hope, this is my sincere hope, as a moderator, I sincerely hope that Palestinians should also be united. The reconciliation that has failed should be brought up and you call it reconciled back so that the Palestinians, they themselves, without the unity among the Palestinians, I think there will be something that the Israeli like very much. Also, I would like to welcome the panelist number 2, His Excellency Mr. Atif Sharif Mian, and he will be talking on Kashmir, the struggle for self-determination and freedom.
Assalamu alaikum and good morning. I thank the organizers, especially Chiku Azmi, for taking this effort and putting together this forum. I also would like to express thanks to Professor Hashim Kamali and Professor Dr. Muhammad Azim for their support to this event, to this forum. And I am thankful to you all for taking out time to listen to the two most important issues facing the Muslim world. A lot of the earlier speakers have drawn very good comparison between Palestine and Kashmir. They're both the issues left by the British legacy, and they're all facing similar kind of situation and facing the similar kind of ruthless and oppressive regimes, oppressive governments, right-wing extremist people who don't believe in any human rights and are taking part in the violence. As my High Commissioner has already spoken at length about the current situation in Kashmir after this 5 August 2019 when Indian government revoked the special status of Kashmir, I would take you a little bit back at the time of 1947, how the Kashmir issue was generated and how it has moved through different phases to its current phase. Kashmir actually has a very complex geography and history. It's actually the whole of this area, basically Ladakh, Gilgit, except this very yellow part, Aqsa, all the rest was Kashmir, that was the Kashmir in 1947. At that time, Kashmir was Ladakh, Srinagar, Jammu, Azad Kashmir, Gilgit and Baltistan. They were all part of, one region. So at that time, 1947, the British. Okay, so this is the next. This is the currently now Aqsa is with China. The Ladakh region is populated by the Buddhist people. It's very thinly populated, very small population, but they're Buddhist, and it touches Tibet. So China itself has a claim on Ladakh because it thinks that the British captured this place when they were in a weak position. Then on northern side, Gilgit and northern area, it touches with Afghanistan. That is a place called Badakhshan. It also touches with Central Asia. On the left side down, you see Azad Kashmir, the slightly orange color. So that is the area that was liberated. Plus this Gilgit and up north, Gilgit and northern areas. They were liberated by the Mujahideen. So this was the historical Ladakh. Then Baltistan, Gilgit Agency. The Valley of Kashmir, that is the core valley, is in the middle part. Then Poonch is called the Azad Kashmir, and Jammu is the mostly Hindu-dominated area. So Kashmir, unfortunate part that it has a long history of oppression. The Dogra rulers, they captured Kashmir in 1846, and since then they were Hindu rulers. They started from Jammu and they captured all the other areas. The majority was Muslims, and they were known for their oppression and cruelty to the Muslims. British European at that time noted that death or migration was the only escape from the Dogra servitude. So quickly coming to the 1947, the ruler of the Kashmir was a Hindu Maharaja, Hari Singh. The British told him either he can join Pakistan or India according to the partition plan. Pakistan was a natural choice because the majority of Kashmir was Muslim, and Kashmir was geographically much closer to Pakistan than to India. All the road and rail links were through Pakistan. All the trade was done through Pakistan. Raja actually wanted to be independent, so he didn't take a decision very quickly. He entered into an agreement with Pakistan that the status quo will continue. On the other side, while he was still indecisive, the Dogra forces, the Hindu forces, and also forces from other Hindu princely states, they entered into Jammu and they slaughtered about 300,000 Muslims, and they drove away about 500,000 Muslims from Jammu towards Pakistan. The purpose was to change the demography of Jammu, because at that time no one was clear whether Kashmir was going to be part of Pakistan or going to be part of India. So they thought that at least one region where the Hindus were in slight majority, at least they should drive away the Muslims. Anyhow, because of these developments, the people in the rest of Kashmir, they rose up in arms. They started a rebellion against Maharaja, and the Pathan tribals from other parts of from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, north, other parts of near Afghanistan, near Pakistan, they also entered Kashmir, and they joined these people of Poonch against this freedom struggle. However, this is the down part for this thing was that Nehru was the Prime Minister of India at that time. He took up, he portrayed this intervention, the rebellion by the tribal people and by the Poonch people as an effort by them to capture Srinagar. So he pressurized Maharaja that he should allow Indian army to enter into Srinagar and assist him to create the normal situation. So Nehru played up that rebellion. However, before India could send its troop to Kashmir, the Governor General of India, that was the first Governor General, Lord Mountbatten, he was the Viceroy also, he said that he can only send the troops on the condition that a plebiscite will be held later on. As the fighting broke out in Kashmir, India took the matter to the United Nations Security Council. So the UN Security Council brokered a ceasefire between Pakistan and India in January 1949. Nehru promised at the UN that as the situation normalizes, he will hold a plebiscite in Kashmir that will allow the people of Kashmir to decide whether they want to be part of India or they want to be part of Pakistan. The United Nations passed a number of resolutions, and it decided that the final disposition of the issue of Kashmir will be done according to the will of people through a free and impartial plebiscite under the United Nations Forum. The UN appointed a number of commissioners and tasked them to work out how the plebiscite can be done. And unfortunately, every proposal that they came up with was rejected by India. The reason was that India was not sincere in holding the plebiscite. It wanted to capture Kashmir. It wanted Kashmir to be part of India. So it never allowed any workable solution for holding a plebiscite. Many UN mediators, they noted their frustration that India is not sincere in all these efforts. So all these UN efforts for negotiation, for plebiscite, didn't come to any fruition. India also, there was another proposal to refer the matter to arbitration, but India also did not agree to that. We also had bilateral talks with India at Prime Minister level, at the Foreign Minister level, so many different rounds of talks, but all ended without any successful conclusion. Now, India gave special status to Kashmir. The Prince of the Raja of Kashmir, Hari Singh, only gave limited powers to India. That was communications, defense, and foreign relations. All the other powers were retained with Kashmir, and the special status of Kashmir was made part of Indian Constitution, Article 370. That was kind of a terms of accession between Maharaja Hari Singh and India. So Kashmir had its own flag, it had its own Prime Minister and President, and Nehru, later on, Sheikh Abdullah became the first Prime Minister of Kashmir. Sheikh Abdullah is the person who also helped Nehru to side with, he was pro-India in a way, so he became the first Prime Minister of Kashmir. Now I will explain to you a little bit about the political history of Kashmir, about the freedom struggle of Kashmir, because you will understand the dynamics, how Kashmir came to this point. Sheikh Abdullah was loyal to Nehru, but he was not fully towing the line of Sheikh Abdullah. He was also independent-minded. He wanted to have his own policies. Mainly his policy was that the Muslims were very much oppressed in Kashmir during the Maharaja rule. The Hindu minority was having the maximum powers, maximum economy, maximum jobs. So he tried to create some kind of balance, give some more powers to Muslims, give some more prosperity to the Muslims. However, this policy was not liked by the Hindu minority, and they created a lot of pressure Prime Minister Nehru. So because of this thing, Nehru dismissed the government of Sheikh Abdullah, whom he once declared the Lion of Kashmir, the most popular leader of Kashmir. Nehru, but very easily he dismissed Sheikh Abdullah because his purpose has been fulfilled already. So he installed another person, Bakshi, Ghulam Muhammad, as the next Chief Minister of Kashmir. Now, Bakshi ruled for 10 years, and in that 10 years, he did all the negative things at the behest of Nehru. He was very oppressive, he was corrupt, and he also gave a lot of power that was given under autonomy to Kashmir back to India. He was kind of a slave to India. And Sheikh Abdullah himself had to spend most of his next 22 years in jails because he was not coming to terms with New Delhi, and he had to spend most of his time in the jail. In 1971, for example, Sheikh Abdullah's party, which had 1 million voters, was banned. Finally, in 1975, when Prime Minister Nehru's daughter, Indira Gandhi, was the Prime Minister, Sheikh Abdullah came to terms with reality and he surrendered, and he said, okay, I'm willing to work with New Delhi. Whatever the terms are offered to him, he said, okay, whatever is accomplished, he's going to live with that. So the next generation of Kashmiri leaders, Sheikh Abdullah died and his son became the Chief Minister. Now, Indira Gandhi again had an issue with Farooq Abdullah because Farooq Abdullah was not listening to her completely. So she dismissed his government and she put him in the jail also. Now, all these things, made one thing very clear to the Kashmiri people. They realized that the special status was just a bogus thing. There was no reality to the special status. All the powers rested with the New Delhi, and no Kashmiri leader could have a government independently or could have any independent policy. So because of these economic injustice and India's repeated intervention in Kashmir, majority of the people got alienated. The Kashmiris got alienated. In 1980s, they started a mass uprising, basically an armed struggle against Kashmir, which continued through 1990s. Now, India crushed this insurgency with brutal force. Tortures, rapes, curfew, abductions, they were common. About 70,000 Kashmiris were killed during this insurgency. Obviously, the insurgency ended, but it left a lot of scars and hatred and pain among the Kashmiris. The Kashmiris became totally alienated from India. So for time being, on the surface there was calm, but at the deep down, Kashmiris were not satisfied. However, in 2016, the latest uprising in Kashmir, in 2016, Burhan Wani was a very popular Kashmiri leader. He was killed by Indian forces without any trial, and this led to mass uprising. Even school children, women, and youth took to the streets. The extremist BJP government was in power at that time, so it abandoned the policy of dialogue with the Kashmiri people. It thought that they are too powerful and gun is the only solution. They are going to be very tough, cruel, and they will make sure that no concession is given to the Kashmiris. So they adopted a very tough policy. They converted Kashmir into a killing field. Over 1,000 people have died since July 2016. Pellet gun has become the weapon of choice for the police to dispel the crowds. About 10,000 people have been injured and about few hundred have been blinded by the pellet shots. This one picture became very infamous that they strapped the Indian army strapped a Kashmiri to the front of the jeep so that he will become a human shield, so that the stone pelters will not throw stone on them. And the BBC, world media criticized this picture quite a lot. So United Nations Human Rights Watchdog, they documented the human rights violation in their reports in 2018 and 19, and they called for an international investigation into the Indian atrocities. They said that Indian soldiers have virtual impunity. They have no fear of punishment. Not a single case has been, not a single soldier has been punished in last 30 years, despite hundreds of complaints of torture, of killings, of rapes, murders, disappearances. There are draconian laws in the valley. Anyone can be taken away for 2 years without trial, without any legal remedy, without any justification, and they can be put behind bars. The UN also said that India has been using excessive force in Kashmir, resulting in unlawful killings, injuries, abductions, rapes, and mass graves. About 7,000 mass graves have been found out. Then denial of fundamental rights. People are not allowed to go to school. They are not allowed to go to hospital. The ambulances, the doctors, even they have not spared from these violence. Now on 5th of August 2019, India repealed this Article 370 of the Constitution, and it ended the special status of Kashmir. You'd see in the orange side is Ladakh territory. They have separated it from the whole of Jammu and Kashmir and converted into a federal territory. And this is now Ladakh is without a legislature. And on the left side, you see the blue Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir has about 100,000 square kilometer, about 12 million population, 8 million is Muslim. So in Jammu and Kashmir, they have also made it a union territory, but that will have its legislature. Now, what is the implication? The implication is that earlier, the Indians from other parts of India could not settle into, they could not become citizens of Kashmir. And the purpose was that the majority, the Muslim population of Kashmir would stay intact. Demography could not be changed. But now any Hindu from other parts of India can become a citizen of India, and they will eventually like to do the same thing that they have done to Palestine, like West Bank, like Gaza, that slowly erode the majority of the state and convert into a Hindu majority state, so that 10 years, 15 years later, when a plebiscite will be held, then the state will no longer be a Muslim majority state. So that is the main reason that the people of Kashmir are so upset with this, end of their special status. As my earlier explained by our High Commissioner, about 40,000 additional troops have been deployed in Kashmir. Already about 700,000 troops are stationed in Kashmir. Kashmir is now the most militarized zone in the world. There is one soldier for every 20 Kashmiris. There is a total curfew since 5 August 2019. TV, internet, mobile, and landlines have been shut down. Total disruption of life. Economy has been shattered. Kashmir has an expensive crop of about $1 billion of apple. No apple has been, they are not able to harvest their apple. Their apple farms have been destroyed. Their walnut farms have been destroyed. The economy has totally guttered, gone down the drain. Then food, medicine, essential items are finishing at their homes. Mosques are under chains. At the Eid al-Adha, no one could go to offer prayers in the mosque, and no one is allowed to go for Friday prayers also. Then a lot of patients that are suffering from heart attack, heart disease, cancer, snake bites, these kind of emergency diseases, they're all not able to go to the hospitals. And even if they go to the hospitals, the doctors cannot call their specialist because there's no mobile, there's no landline working. So a junior doctor cannot reach to his senior doctor and ask for the help. For example, if the medicine is somewhere, they cannot call the storekeeper, even so the medicines are not there. A lot of people are dying because of these restrictions on movement, restrictions on communication. There's a massive crackdown. 13,000 people have been arrested from their homes. The leaders, the activists, the human rights workers, the lawyers, and many youth people. Especially worrisome is that a lot of young people, 12 years, 13 years, 15 years, have been taken from their homes at the night raid. Many of these innocent boys, either they die in the custody or they are severely tortured. detainees, and another thing they have started just now, that earlier they used to put the people in the prison in Kashmir, but now they are shifting them to prisons in far off India, so the parents cannot visit those jails. They cannot afford to go there. They cannot even send lawyers over there, because a lawyer in Kashmir cannot go so far. And the other problem is that in those jails they are like Hindu other prisoners, so they take Kashmiris as extremists, as terrorists, as troublemakers. So they start punishing Kashmiris over there. That's a double jeopardy for them. Then a lot of media and international organizations have documented these atrocities, but of course the true scale of these atrocities is still not known, because there's a blackout, there's a communication blackout, so we don't know what is the actual scale of the atrocities. Here, I'll also like to present to you the total list of atrocities and killings. Since 1989, when the first freedom struggle started, till 2019, about 95,000 people have been killed. 7,000 have been killed in the police custody. There are like 7,000 people who are found in the graves. Then women have been gang raped, about 11,000 women. And about 110,000 properties have been totally destroyed. I'll also now show you some pictures of, this is the guy who was stabbed to the front of the Jeep, and the Indian Chief of Army Staff did not criticize it. In fact, he congratulated the person who did it, the major who did it. The pictures speak for themselves. These are the victims of the pellet guns. 10,000 people have been injured with the pellet guns, and the pellets go through whole body, and they have even targeted young girls, children, house ladies. These are the latest pictures in August and September 2019. These are the, it was so touching that kids were kissing the shoes of their fathers, their dead father, and I saw kids kissing the shoes of their dead fathers to say them farewell. This is a daughter hugging her dead father for the last time. This was the Burhan Wani who was killed in 2016, and that led to the recent struggle. This is one video. If you have time, we can play it. Comparison similarities between Kashmir and Palestine. I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much, His Excellency Mr. Arif Sharif, for the fruitful presentations and interesting. We are delighted, and I think we are very good in time management, despite we started late. But I think we finished a bit early in the sense before the question and answer. We have ample of time for the Q&A, and I would like to open to every one of you. If you have questions, please be precise, short and precise, and perhaps introduce yourself and organizations. And you have comments, very briefly as well.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya Dr. Narimah Awin, Chairman of the National Population Family Development, IPPKN. I hope I can be brief. And before that, I must warn you, you might consider my comments rather in futility, because I will be talking something that many people have talked about, and we have given up on this. I'm talking about the toothlessness of the United Nations. Why is the United Nations not doing anything more, or for that matter, the OIC as well? So I think this is one of the most frustrating aspects of this. How can India say that under the Simla agreement that we cannot allow, we are allowed not to allow any third party, including the UN, to interfere with our negotiations with Kashmir? I find that ridiculous. How can they not allow the UN to go? How can the UN allow that to happen? And the plebiscite. How can people just don't talk about the plebiscite anymore? And if the UN said this is purely political, nothing legal, therefore we cannot interfere, I think that is really very, very unfair. Now, talking about how India can be given that much of authority without people, without anybody criticizing India, And now we see about the Hindutva agenda of Narendra Modi, and now he is the new best friend of Benjamin Netanyahu, his guru, so we are not surprised. But I have something discomforting personally about the Hindutva agenda, because whenever we want to criticize Modi and BJP for the Hindutva agenda, what about us in Malaysia? We don't allow namaz in the mosque. They don't allow, Modi doesn't allow, or the BJP is not allowing namaz to be performed. Oh, by the way, namaz is bayang, the prayers in. But what about we in Malaysia? The extremist Islamists in Malaysia, we are doing that to the Christians. We burn their Bible. So it's difficult for me personally to criticize the BJP when my own people in Malaysia is doing about the same thing. I'm sorry to take so long. So that's human rights. The other thing is, I hope the declaration that we're going to come up later today, I want us to really, really make a statement on the role of the media. I think the media is very imbalanced, and that's maybe because I watch a lot of Indian channels. For one thing, Excellency Atif, if you recall, if you see the media, it is so frustrating that when the Pakistan government released the pilot whatever, I can't remember his name, Abinath something or other, Abinath, that was such a great thing that the Pakistani government did. But did the media cover that? No, not at all. I don't see that being reported in CNN or BBC in a positive way. So they sing the song of India. So that's one. The other thing is the plebiscite. Why is the plebiscite not being reported at all in the media? And now we know that's why Article 370 was revoked, because by the time they have the Hindu majority, then they will have the plebiscite. That is Modi's very, very evil agenda. Finally, Excellency, I hope you will not feel offended by my next question or comment. The media is also very, very silent on Balochistan, but the Indian government, whenever they talk about Kashmir, they always throw back at this break to you, to Pakistan, about what you do to the Balochis. So how much of that allegations by India is true about what Pakistan is doing in Balochistan?
Thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. If you were asked to make a proposal toward the resolution of the problem, what would you propose? What would you ask the people that this is the priority? Yes, we know the details of the violence and the brutalities and so on, but I think that a political solution, a political formula that you would suggest and people can focus upon, what would be that? Thank you.
Thank you very much for very interesting and intriguing questions, I would say. The UN is, as you know, that it has become dysfunctional. United Nations has become, it started with very noble objectives in after the Second World War, but we all know that because of this polarization between in the world, especially the countries having the veto, they all, every time anything comes up, Russia would veto it, or some other country, or US would veto on behalf of Israel, or some other country would veto on behalf of India. So the UN system has become, I think, quite even I was reading a New York Times editorial. They said that in terms of Kashmir context, they were saying that it is unfortunate that the UN system has become dysfunctional. Internationally, we have no way of settling political disputes. The only way is either through war of attrition or an armed conflict. There's no longer a way of settling those issues without resorting to war, or without letting the world peace be destroyed. So, this is a fact that we all know, but we can only try. But despite that, I think the UN still has its relevance. That still residual work that it is doing, we cannot just throw it away. And on India, I think the only thing that we can do right now is to create awareness, because if the world capitals, if the people say something, that would make an impact. Because I was reading somewhere an Indian writing that let's do anything on Kashmir because we know the world will not speak. So they are also mindful of whether the world says something about it or not, because end of the day, how powerful they are still a country. You know, they have to sell their products, they have to sell their brand, they have to sell their image. So if their image, for example, becomes of an extremist country, that will not be positive for them. You know, so I think end of the day, we cannot lose hope, and we can still continue our efforts to bring this issue to the public forums, to the media, to the international, United Nations. As you rightly said that according to the Simla Agreement, India cannot claim that it's a bilateral issue. Actually, the Simla Agreement also says that any role of United Nations is still there. You know, the Simla Agreement does not stop the role of United Nations on this issue. And the UN resolutions on Kashmir are also valid. They have not become invalid. And one proof of this thing was that Pakistan requested United Nations Security Council to convene a special session on Kashmir recently. So if this issue was not there or not an international dispute, why would the UN Security Council again discuss this issue? And another thing that India has itself violated the Simla Agreement. Simla Agreement says both countries will not take any step that will complicate the issue, that will change the status of the issue. You know, let the issue be like as it is and try to resolve this issue. So this 5 August step by India is actually changing the status quo in a much bigger way, in a fundamental way. So when they themselves have violated Simla Agreement, how can they tell others what is the right way to act? Then, as you said about, ma'am, that Abhinandan releasing of Abhinandan was a positive gesture by Pakistan, and the purpose was that we want to demonstrate to the world that we do not want war, we do not want conflict to escalate. It was the India who was, because of their political agenda, their elections were coming, they wanted to prove to their country that they're very tough with Pakistan, they can teach us a lesson. So they were portraying and they were escalating the conflict, not us. I think international media did appreciate it, but not to the extent that they should have. I agree with you. And especially the Indian media, as you see yourself, the Indian media, unfortunately, the Indian media has become totally partisan. You know, there is no rationality left in Indian media. They have totally become, follow the BJP line, follow the extremist line, because I think the big corporations, the corporate world has bought the media, and there is no objectivity left in media. There is no neutrality left in media. Every time you switch on the Indian media, you will hear very extremist views, hatred of Pakistan and total falsification of the facts. I mean, any reporting has to have some kind of objectivity. I mean, if it is a totally black and, then it loses all its relevance. So that is the thing. As regard Balochistan, let me make it very clear that Kashmir has no comparison with Balochistan. Kashmir is an internationally recognized dispute. The matter was brought to the United Nations Security Council. The United Nations Security Council noted that a plebiscite needs to be done. Then there is no, as explained to you, no freedom over there, no people are in the jails, such a big army over there. So they were denied their political rights. Balochistan has always been part of Pakistan. The whole world accepts Balochistan as integral part of Pakistan. It is one of the provinces of Pakistan. Secondly, there's a lot of freedom in Pakistan. Under Pakistani constitution, the provinces have so much powers now. 50% of the budget goes to their provinces. They have their own parliament. They have their own legislature. They can have their own civil service, their own police. And these only very small number of people, insurgents, do some kind of terrorism, some kind of mischief against Pakistan, and only those people are being, affected. The majority is happily living with Pakistan. I think India purposely tries to, project this issue, but the whole world. For example, one thing, when Prime Minister Imran Khan was going to United States. The Trump administration declared one of the Baloch organization, militant organization, as terrorist. Harbiar Murray, he is leading a Baloch terrorist organization. So United States declared it as terrorist. So I think this is quite different from the whole thing. The world doesn't recognize Balochistan as a disputed territory, as an unresolved territory. And then obviously there are tribal people, some people on both our side of Pakistan side and also on other side, the whole region is, there some kind of unrest, and there's no comparison on this issue. And Excellency, Professor Hashim Kamale, I think Excellency, the first step towards any solution is the will of both sides to come to a solution. While we can discuss in theory any kind of the best kind of solution or very practical solution, something, that can actually work, but it takes two to tango, unless India shows any willingness or any softness on its position and it's willing to compromise, willing to find a solution cannot be found. I mean, we can only refer to the UN's solution, the plebiscite, because that is the only thing right now at the table, But the main point is that any solution has to be also take into account the wishes of the people of Kashmir. And when you shut down the people of Kashmir, you put them in the prison, how can a solution be found? Pakistan or India cannot do it all by themselves, And the main thing that the impediment about any solution is that India is not willing. As long as they're not willing, Pakistan cannot unilaterally work on a solution. We have to have, their willingness to find a solution. And then obviously, at that stage, we can see what is the best solution. Excellency, definitely the best scenario right now is to give the people the right to decide what do they want, what do they want to join Pakistan or stay with India. But you know very well that they have already given a verdict against India. I mean, if India was confident that the Kashmiris would stay with it, it would have allowed a referendum.
Although the questions were raised to His Excellency, but I would like to touch on a little bit on the issue that Dr. Narmina raised about the United Nations. I think the United Nations was designed to be toothless. It was not meant to have any intervening powers. It was designed after the Second World War to promote multilateralism and to help mitigate in cases of conflict. The League of Nations, which was the earlier institution, was an idealist institution. It was designed to stop war from happening, and it eventually failed, and we had one of the worst wars in history. But for the League of Nations, look at the many resolutions that Israel has broken. At least 90 UNSC resolutions were broken by different Israeli governments. The very 1947 partition plan devised by the UN was broken by Israel. Look at what the US is doing now by bullying Iran and others against the will of the United Nations. And we all remember the 2003 American unilateral decision to invade Iraq. We live in a world of, I would say, realpolitik, where the international system is anarchic, and it is, to some extent, I don't totally subscribe to that, but to some extent it is power that reflects on how you operate in the international system. We have to be strong. That's it. Muslims have to be strong. What Tun Dr. Mahathir and President Erdogan raised in the United Nations on different occasions about Muslims not having a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council makes a lot of sense. We cannot change the world system that we operate in, at least not now. Superpowers like China cannot change the system. Russia cannot change the system, although they don't like it. But what we can promote and push for is for us Muslims, the 1.8 billion Muslims living in this world, to have our own representatives in the permanent representatives in the UNSC, where we can at least have a say in world politics and to some extent promote the ideals that we believe in. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I just want to make a comment. Over here we are pinning too much hope on UN, and let's be very clear about it that United Nations is an NGO. It's not a government. They don't have any enforcement power. And this NGO is the biggest Christian NGO in the world. We must realize that. Because when it comes to Palestine and Kashmir, the issues are is hanging there for 70 years. But when it comes to East Timor and South Sudan, where Christians are involved, a resolution is passed and immediately implemented, and South Sudan and East Timor get their independence. So we must think realistically that what is our way forward? We cannot pin our hope on the UN. The need of the hour is that Muslims should speak with one voice. Unless we have that, we cannot solve our problem.
Assalamu alaikum. Question for Mr. Atif. Is the option facing the Kashmiris only between India and Pakistan? In the event a plebiscite is held, what are the likelihoods of the Kashmiris demanding an independent state?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saudara pengurusi, saya campur-campur ya, cakap dalam bahasa Malaysia dan dalam bahasa Inggris.
Boleh saya tahu siapa sana?
Perkara yang pertama,
nama boleh nama.
Nama saya Yasir Haji Ehsan dari Badan Bukan Kerajaan, NGO, Guru-Guru Selangor. Jadi, I'm a teacher. Jadi, my question will be to our panelists, what more should we do? We know our problem. We know our Palestinian and Kashmiri problem. What more can we do? If it is just a question of going to the surah or the mosque and donating 1 ringgit, 10 ringgit, 50 ringgit, or 100 ringgit, it's something quite normal in Malaysia. What I should say is, what I want to ask you is, what more can we do? No, I'm an NGO man. Maybe I can go back to my people and tell my people what happened, what transpired here. That I can do. But what more should we do? Now, I want to congratulate this majlis, especially dengan Dato' Azmi lah. I know him lama dah dulu, you know. And then also our Dr. Professor Muhammad Azam, you know. So I want to congratulate this majlis. But the question that I'm asking is, what more should we do? You mentioned about Tun Mahathir, you mentioned about many people and so on, you know. But the question again and again I should ask is, apa lagi yang harus kita buat untuk memastikan bahawa isu Palestin dan Kashmir ini dapat kita martabatkan. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Farooq Al-Qadri, belong to Pakistan. My question, UNO, OIC, all over the world, whole world, especially the Muslim world, are waiting to hear the news. All Kashmirian, even Singh and Muslim, are to be killed. They want to hear the news. There is no any alive person in Kashmir. The whole world want to hear this one and want to know this one. Even in television or movies, the rescue of the world. Even one dog in problem, in sea or in anywhere, the rescue coming with the helicopter, with the everything, to save the life of one dog. There is no thinking which race of dogs, which country of this dog, but they save the life of the dog. 8 million people are going to be die and going to be kill them, but nobody interfering. For what? It's mean already planned everything to kill all the Punjabis, Singh in Kashmir and Muslim, especially. Just like our Datu Muhammad Tahir indicated that in the East Timor in Indonesia, within very few days or few months, that get the freedom. And in Kashmir, 70 years already gone, and there is no any freedom name in Kashmir. My question to the Pakistan High Commission, Mr. Atif Sharif, already you told 3 times India attack on Pakistan. For what? He claims the Azad Kashmir is belong to me and other area, I want to get this one. How he can claim? We also claim there are 99% Muslim in Kashmir. Also this is our area. And we are agree, and we should be agree. Okay, if the Kashmiri want to be independent state, very nice. But kill them, every person inside, it is not good. Or we are hearing, we are waiting to hear the news, there is no any Kashmiri alive in Kashmir. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sanisha, 86 News CEO. My question is Mr. Atif from Pakistan High Commissioner. I just want to know, as a media, in the world media, we want to know what is the status now in Kashmir situation. Where is Kashmir standing? Which platform is standing now? That's it.
Thank you very much. I think the first question was that about what is the solution, and India, Kashmiris have the whether to join India or Pakistan or any other thing. I think this is very clear that the United Nations Security Council, 1947 till now, the UN thought about it, mediated on it, and that was the decision that the United Nations Security Council took, that give the Kashmiris a choice to decide whether they want to join Pakistan or want to join India. And I think the main reason, the problem for the Kashmiris is the oppression by India. The root cause is that Kashmiris think that they were not. It was like a forced marriage. Like someone abducts you and then some person marries him. It's like forced marriage. So those people of Kashmir that were liberated by in 1947 in Azad Kashmir, they are happy living with Pakistan. This question has never arisen over there. That where they want to join. Because they have all the freedoms, they have their rights. So I think this is a question that's only meant to divert us from the true solution. Because the Kashmiris have, if you if you see in the Indian occupied Kashmir, any person who dies over there, martyr, he's buried in the flag of Pakistan, and their only slogan is, we want to join Pakistan, we want self-determination. And it is so, therefore, this question, I think, has been settled very well since 1947, that the 2 options have to be given, and then they decide what do they desire out of this. As regards this proposal, what more we should do, I think this is a question that both brother, you will also like to respond to. I think this is I think the Muslim unity is the first thing, the Muslim countries should remove their differences, put aside their differences, and realize that the oppressed people require their unity, require their joint action, and secondly, we as common Muslims, we also have a role, when the society is active, you have your MPs, you have your government, we have our government, we can also ask our government to be more active on Muslim issues, and when we talk with other people, we can raise our issues. So I think practically this is the things that we can do. Obviously, our governments are also doing that they can do. The problem is that war is not an option, in this world. The war has become so explosive, so damaging, that we can only look for the peaceful solution, try to convince, try to, advocate a positive and peaceful solution. And let me tell you, if there's unity, if we can have more economic, we can improve our economies also. If we have stronger voice in the world system, the world will listen to us. Even India would listen to us. The reason why India has taken this step is that a lot of Muslim countries, they know that would not raise a single word against it. I mean, they can do something in OIC, but when it comes to practically saying something face to face, one on one, they would not say much to them. If they are aware that something will come, there'll be a reaction. There will be a reaction on the trade. There'll be a reaction on the Indian workers working in overseas countries. Then definitely they will not take this step. This is, I mean, we all have to look inwards also. And yeah, the brother also asked about whether we should just look at the Kashmiris being killed. No, I think we are raising voices, and international media is also giving some attention. So I'm sure that Modi and will not dare to move towards more bloodshed. Because the world is also now getting slowly aware of this issue, and hopefully things will improve. We are hoping that Kashmiris will get their rights.
To give a very brief answer on what can be done, what should be done, soalan yang Cikgu tanya tadi. In Palestine, we are promoting one of the very simple solutions to disarm Israel, to stop it from its crimes, which is BDS, boycott, divest, sanctions. BDS is an international movement that was started by Palestinian NGOs, Palestinian civil society, in 2005, and now it has chapters almost all over the world, even in the US itself. And this simple tool has become very powerful that the United States, the Zionist lobby in the United States is up on its toes because of the pressure of the idea itself. The idea is to boycott Israel economically, culturally, politically, and diplomatically. What Malaysia did a few months ago, earlier this year, when the Israeli swimmers were banned from entering the country, was a very significant move. For many, it seems like just another day. It's okay, a sports event, and Malaysia decided not to host Israelis. But trust me, my brothers and sisters, it means a lot to the Palestinians who are dying on the ground in Palestine to get their freedom. And it actually has a very huge impact politically and diplomatically on Israel. The current situation is that unfortunately, many OIC member states, especially Arab states, are chasing Israel to normalize relations with it for domestic reasons, for power, etc. What Malaysia did was to go against the wave of normalizing relations with Israel. I hope that other OIC member states will do the same. And we individuals can also promote that. Let's promote boycott of Israel, economic boycott, cultural boycott, academic boycott, etc. Because that will hit them hard and will empower the Palestinians to seek their rights. Well, the quick, fast solution is for the Muslim world to unite and to come and disarm Israel and end occupation, but I don't see that happening very soon. We have to push forward for unity of the Muslims. But for the time being, let's at least not fall prey to the Israeli plans to open normal relations with this occupation state. That's the minimum that we can do, and it will hurt them if we plan it well and if we do it well.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Muhammad Faisal from Thailand. I am a Secretary General of the Council of Humanitarian Networking of Sheikhul Islam of Thailand. So I think maybe the solution, as some brother raised the issue just now, and your answer, maybe the Kashmir issue, the approach is maybe quite a little bit different, because you can say most of the Asian countries, they have economic link with the India. So maybe country boycott, economic boycott, absolutely cannot do. Maybe you have to find another, because India is the most trader import the goods from Malaysia, including Thailand. That's why Malaysia and Thailand have FTA, free trade agreement with India. So when they want to do the approach, similarly, the Palestine maybe is different. I like to hear from the people here, because in Thailand, quite different. When we are going to have some seminar, like International Institute of Advanced Islamic Study conduct today, we cannot do. We cannot do, because the influence of the Indian in Thailand is totally much more than Pakistan, because they have some policy, look for India. That's why maybe some strategy you can advise us how to approach. It's okay, the Palestinian, Kashmir, the item, the topic today, maybe some area quite similarly, but the approach maybe some more diplomatic approach also need to be taken. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Javedur Rahman. I'm a journalist based in Pakistan, based in Malaysia. I've been interviewing many dignitaries of Malaysia, especially on Kashmir issues. There are so many different opinions. Just now, our brother asked, we are waiting that Kashmiri will be died, then we will take some action. And since Pakistan, I think, is the only country in the world who is trying to save the entire universe by fighting with the terrorism. And Pakistan has sacrificed 70 over thousands lives and so many billions in economy. Pakistan is immediately affecting this issue. I would like to just request, after this forum, what is the message, what is the conclusive message for this issue, Palestine and Kashmir, which we can think that we are going one more step forward. We are just not talking and organizing seminars and anything. I just want to know what is at least a conclusion of this forum to move forward. Thank you so much.
This is Hamza Wain from PMTV. We have taken this initiative to form this TV channel because of both the Prime Minister from Malaysia and Pakistan, raising the issues that we should make some platform to work together. So what this forum is going to do later on, what the results will come out of it, that we should take some step, because as the brother mentioned, that we cannot just cut off on the trade issues with India or Israel right away, because a lot of interests are there for the other countries. So what about we all start as a Muslim, as our Prime Minister has said, that we should start something together on economic basis, that more ties, bilateral ties, more economic ties to start with, with our Muslim countries. And what about what you said, like opening up the visa issues of Muslim countries? We have still have so many issues that we have in our own Muslim countries. We have to get visas. So what about when visas are there? Then how can we economically grow? When we have, we have to wait for so much time to go and visit for the business ties and look for the businesses together. So I think some issues should be taken on, steps should be taken on these things.
Clarifying what I suggested just now, I was talking about Israel's occupation, BDS for Israel. I was not talking about the Kashmir, India issue, because the strategy has to be different, and the two issues, although there are similarities as the video has shown, but they are different. There are many differences between the two situations. Israel is an illegitimate occupation. The state of Israel has not existed 80 years ago. It was created by foreign colonial powers as probably an imperialist front for the West to continue to dominate the Middle East and to separate the Arab countries. So Israel is an illegal occupation that should not be there in the first place. That's why we have to boycott it. We have to make sure that the existence of Israel is undermined in all means possible. Probably peaceful means to be prioritized, but Israel's existence is a problem in the first place. India is a totally different scenario, of course. India is a natural regional power, and nobody is calling for a boycott of India And it's not a religious conflict that Muslims have with India or even with Israel. We are calling for human rights. We're calling for freedoms, self-determination, and implementation of United Nations resolutions. So what we are calling for is what free people of the world are calling for. And I believe many Indian human rights activists are calling for the same demands. And we've just heard a list of names of Nobel Peace laureates, some of them Indian, calling for basic human rights and right of self-determination. So let's differentiate on this respect. But again, let's agree that we have to mobilize all our efforts to end the suffering of the people of Palestine and the people of Kashmir, and to stop atrocities and occupation and violations of human rights. Thank you.
Brother, I was referring when I was talking about what the Muslim countries can do. So I was just referring to that that there are many Muslim countries that have very deep linkages with India, and if they want to talk to them, they can talk to them. It doesn't mean that we outrightly start boycott. On the other side, every country has its interests with any other country. It's not just black and white. Many Muslim countries' leaderships have spoken to India. Prime Minister of Malaysia, Tun Mahathir Mohamad, when he met with Prime Minister Modi in Vladivostok on the Eastern Economic Forum, he also raised this issue of Kashmir. Leadership of Iran has, given strong statements on Kashmir issue. Then President of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, has spoken on this issue. But that doesn't mean that they're ending their relationship with India. It's they're obviously normal trade and other relations continue. But obviously, when you're talking, then you at least convey this unease, this concern on this issue, and everyone does that. For example, on so many world countries, the trade continues, but their differences also continue. Obviously, with Thailand, it's a different situation, but at least at societal level, at people level, we can do something. I give you an example of United States. Although US system is much different from the world, that the US is a very close partner of India. Now they think India as a strategic partner. Despite that, a lot of congressmen, the Kashmiri people, the Pakistanis, the Muslims living in United States, they're writing to their members of parliament, congressmen, representatives, that please take up this issue of Kashmir. So because of that, many senators have written to the president, to the Senate, that India should respect the human rights in Kashmir. So although they are very close to India, but still there are parallel processes continuing. So I think trade can continue, but in parallel, we have to have some kind of influence, some kind of voice raised for Kashmir and express to India that they cannot continue like this.
Okay, thank you very much. I think on behalf of the organizers, we would like to thank Brother Muslim Imran, Director Palestinian Cultural Organization Malaysia, as well as His Excellency Mr. Atif Sharif, Deputy Chief of Mission High Commission of Pakistan to Malaysia, for their sharing important presentation and also answering the questions to the audience. With that, I would like to pass the mic back to the Master of Ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Azam, and our learned speakers, Mr. Muslim Imran and His Excellency, Mr. Atif Sharif Mian.
Before I read this draft of the declaration, let me just highlight to you I'm very vague about the attendance, but I think there are more than 20 NGOs, both in Malaysia, and also we have friends from Thailand, we have friends from Cambodia, I think we have some from Indonesia, we have somebody from Sri Lanka, I think. But whatever it is, this is a very diversified attendance and participants of the forum, and I think we are very happy to have this kind of attendance to give this impact. This declaration that I'm going to read to you will be there in the screen. So I will read through it, and of course there will be some ideas, proposals to add, subtract, or even amend. But this declaration will be carried as far as we are going to send this to the United Nations, to the OIC, to the ASEAN Secretariat, and various international forums. So the follow-up of this will be discussed by an action group that we have established, and we will do whatever to see that this document will be taken attention by all the authorities that are concerned. So let me just read it as you see it on the screen, and then we open for suggestions and amendments. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The Joint Declaration on Kashmir and Palestine for Freedom and Self-Determination. Noting that Kashmiris and Palestinians had to endure more than 70 years of occupation, denial, and violation of human rights by foreign occupiers, fully aware that the UN has passed resolutions that reaffirm that both Kashmir and Palestine are occupied lands, reasserting as Kashmiris have the right for self-determination, so do the Palestinians must be given the right of return to their own lands, recognizing that both Kashmiris and Palestinians are victims of foreign occupation planned and maneuvered by the British. Forgive me for some of the typos. Aware that the Hindutva by India and Judaization by Israel are both aimed at cultural and religious genocide against the people of both Kashmir and Palestine, realizing that the resistance for freedom by Kashmiris against Indian forces and Palestinians against Israel's Zionist occupiers are legitimate struggles that should be supported by international communities, affirming the growing solidarity expressed for Kashmiris are heartening, as is the solidarity for Palestinian struggle, fully recognizing that the India and Israel alliance is clear, and the ongoing siege of Kashmir is the translation of years of colonizing agenda of India on the disputed territory of Kashmir. Noting that the two nations, Kashmir and India, are passionate about their brutal occupation of Kashmir and Palestine, the fact that India is one of Israel's biggest arms exports clients, spending about $10 billion over the past decade, Indian police forces have been receiving training in Israel for anti-terror operations which Israel conducts against Palestinians, confirming that the self-determination struggles in Kashmir and Palestine supports the economic of arms trade between India, Israel, and the United States. Aware that the aggressive religious nationalism of Zionism and Hindutva are neutral shared security interests, Kashmiri and Palestinian quest for self-determination are legitimate demands. We declare on Kashmir, number one, demand all the Indian troops to withdraw from Kashmir and return the territory to normality and the security lockdown, right to free movements of all Kashmiris. Through a decade of armed struggle against the Indian state, Kashmiris are faced against almost 1 million military personnel in the region Jammu and Kashmir. Number two, condemning the savage response of the Indian state to the Popular People's Movement by using the pellet guns, a weapon banned in many countries, was used to blind and maim hundreds from a 1-year-old child to the elderly, while the dead and injured on daily basis, these numbers continue to rise. Number three, torture, rape, sexual violence, enforced disappearance, extrajudicial killings are widespread in Kashmir and it must end. These human rights violations are intricately linked to the denial of political sovereignty for Kashmiris. Number 4, demand all political detainees, including 30,000 youth, be released immediately. Number 5, we salute and stand in solidarity with Kashmiris who protest against the Indian state and call for azadi, or freedom. And the last one, number 6, Narendra Modi was denied a visa to the US in 2005, alleged responsibility over the mass murder of Muslims in Gujarat, and he was nicknamed the Butcher of Gujarat, comes from that 2002 event, now the Butcher of Kashmir. With the BJP regime under Modi, he must bear full responsibility on the barbaric actions by the Indian troops against the Kashmiris. On Palestine, number 1, we demand the right of return for all Palestinians must be rendered unconditionally. Number 2, all Palestinians detainees by the Israel must be released, especially the underaged. Number 3, the Jewish settlements on Palestinian lands must be dismantled, and they must return the lands to the Palestinians, and all destroyed properties must be compensated. Number 4, 2 centuries of oppression by Israeli prime ministers and now Benjamin Netanyahu, like his predecessors, can be named the Butcher of Palestinians, as he presided over the brutalities of Gaza, in the West Bank, intrusions and violence in the Aqsa. We demand him to take full responsibility on the atrocities inflicted on the Palestinians. Number 5, the agenda to Judaize Baitul Maqdis and Masjid al-Aqsa by the Zionist Israel must be resisted, and all Muslim countries must unite to oppose it. All Israel troops in the Al-Aqsa Mosque and in East Jerusalem must be withdrawn immediately. Number 6, we denounce the deal of the century concocted by Donald Trump as a peace deal for the Palestinians. There can be no compromise on the right of return for Palestinians. Number 7, we demand the pronouncements of Jerusalem as the capital city of Israel, and countries intending to move their embassies to Jerusalem should revert their decisions. Number 8, we demand specifically the siege on Gaza must immediately be dismantled and the necessary financial need to rehabilitate and rebuild Gaza guaranteed. Number 9, the UN inquiry must firmly lay the weight of the charge of war crimes on Israel in line with the laws on human rights and crimes against humanity. Our final note, as the violence of occupation continues in Palestine daily in the form of illegal settlements and killings, so is the killings in Kashmir. Number 2, we regret the democracy has been empty words uttered by world leaders. Human rights regimes seem toothless in the face of the bold barbarism of nation states invested in repressing democracy. Number 3, we demand transnational solidarity and activism on the struggles of the Kashmiris and the Palestinians. Number 4, solidarity expressed for Kashmiris are heartening, as is the international solidarity for Palestinian struggle. Joining the dots between the occupations of Kashmir and Palestine shows the need for a greater solidarity between these two sovereign struggles. Number 5, UN must act to implement all the resolutions which protects the rights of self-determination of Kashmiris and Palestinians. Number 6, the years 1947 and 1948 mark the creation of the nation states of India and Israel. These years scar Kashmiris and Palestinians. Palestinians have been dispossessed of territory and many forced into exile. Kashmir was handed over from an unpopular ruler without the legitimacy of popular vote to the Indian state on the October 26, 1947. a condition of that accession is the United Nations resolution of 1948 for referendum on plebiscite, never facilitated by Indian state. Israel and India thus inaugurate the colonial occupations of Palestine and Kashmir. There will be some additions to it, but Dr. Namira was talking about media. We'll put that in. But we have listed the endorsers as I have contacted because we didn't have time. I drafted this about 2 in the morning last night. So we have put down the Malaysian Consultative Council of Islamic Organization, the Alliance of World Mosques in Defense of Al-Aqsa, Secretariat for the Assembly of Ulama Asia, Palestine Cultural Organization of Malaysia, Malaysian Kashmir Youth Forum, Muslim Minority Affairs Center, Sejagat Malaysia, Justice and Development Organization of Cambodia, Al-Aqsa Working Group Indonesia. We have also the Council for Humanitarian Network Sheikhul Islam Thailand. We have Salimah Malaysia and Irish Malaysia. So if any of you who came from the organization would like to be part of the list, please go to the secretariat at the back and we will enlist your name, or we'll just sign up here and we will have it on the screen. And what will happen after this document, number one, will immediately be sent to Tun Mahathir. We will send this also to Prime Minister Imran Khan. And then we will also send this to the Palestinian ambassador, and also we'll send it to the United Nations and OIC. We will try to see whether this document can make an impact, but it will trigger the other countries to look at this, that this is a priority issue of the world as of today, and we hope that we will carry on more things that we can do to see the resolution of this crisis, of this issue. So there's another suggestion that we can merge some of the points. I'm just assuming that we are done. So please make sure that you go to the back of the hall and make your registered. This is the one. Okay, it's been shown there. So that by latest tomorrow noon, I should have all the organizations' names on this. I will send it to other organizations that are not been able to come for them to endorse. So we have a bigger number. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tuan Haji. Brothers and sisters, that brings us to the end of the forum.